What's going on, party people? Phantom here, and today we're going to review the most recently released retro console by Nintendo, the Super Nintendo Classic. It's been a while since I've done a review on this channel, but since I've been so damn hyped to get my hands on the SNES Classic, I figured this would be a good review to jump back into the swing of things. I have a few things to cover in this review, and in no particular order, we're going to talk about some general information on the console itself, the design of the hardware, the games and emulation, nagging issues that I have, bonus goodies that have since come about since the system has been released, and then my final verdict overall. The SNES Classic was released on September 29, 2017 for a manufacturer retail sales price of $79.99. At the time of this recording, actually finding an SNES Classic can be hard, with most major physical and online retailers not having any in stock. If you're extremely hard-pressed to own the system at this time, you can turn to eBay, Craigslist, or any other similar type of retail systems and attempt to get your hands on it that way, but chances are you're going to pay double and sometimes triple of the price of the system if you decide to go that route. Nintendo has stated that they will have a larger supply of the SNES Classic for the upcoming 2017 holiday season, so keep your eyes out for future drops. Once you open your box, you're greeted with the system itself, 2 controllers, an HDMI cord, USB power cord with power brick, and a nifty retro poster for all the games on the system, stylized as if it was back in the 1990s. For information's sake, I want to point out that I'm reviewing a Western SNES Classic and not the Famicom or European version of the system, so realize that the style and colors do change from region to region. The console is very small, and the best way to describe it is that it is a shrunk down version of its bigger brother counterpart. The system is so small that you can fit it in the palm of your hand, and it's extremely portable. On the system itself, the power button actually functions as the power switch, and the reset button sends you back to the home menu just the same way as the NES Classic. The cart slot, eject buttons, and controller port front don't have any function, however, and they are just present for our visual appearance. Pulling on the small flap where the controller ports are reveals the actual ports for the controllers bundled in with the system, and they use a nunchuck configuration as seen on the Wii Classic controllers and the NES Classic. The controller is a near exact remake of the SNES controller, with all button placement, button presses, and the feel of the original SNES controller being spot on. As soon as I held this in my hand, I was immediately transported back to my 10-year-old self playing Super Mario World for the first time, and it felt amazing. For years, I've played emulation on my PC with a PlayStation, Xbox, or some other controller found on the internet, and it just didn't feel right. Having this particular controller by Nintendo for the SNES Classic is so spot on that I just don't want to use anything else if I'm playing SNES games via emulation. I will point out that other reviews on the internet have had people talking about a stiff or mushy style D-pad, but I haven't experienced that with any of my controllers, so we're just going to mark that one up to buyer beware. Powering on the system brings you to a main hub where you're greeted with some snazzy menu music, a language select screen, and then ultimately the main menu where you can select from 21 different games that have been bundled in with the system. The main menu, while stylized different from the NES Classic, basically serves the same function overall. You can select from the different games, view their classic game manuals via QR code, and make general changes to how the game is displayed. You can also have different borders that surround the outside of your game, which is a great addition if you're gaming on a rather large TV screen like I have. As for the games themselves, you currently get 21 games, which is down from the 30 of the NES Classic. Don't worry about that though, because what you do get is some of the best titles that were ever released in gaming history. Super Mario World, Super Metroid, Final Fantasy III, Donkey Kong Country, and many more are just some of the top-notch games that make some of the filler games that were on the NES Classic seem just that much more silly to have had them in their first place. There is a bonus game that is included with the system which was never actually released on the SNES back in the day, and that game is Star Fox 2. After playing Star Fox 2, I was a bit underwhelmed since the game didn't really stand the test of time overall, but it was an interesting addition to have and a nice nod from Nintendo overall. Now, the games mean nothing if the emulation is poor, and luckily for all of us, it is as good as ever. While playing through the games, they all looked exceptional on my HD screen, and I didn't experience some of the problems or compatibility errors that I've had using other tech like RetroArch on the PC. Pick your game and go without issue. Returning from the NES Classic is the ability to save your games via save state, but they've upped the game even more for the SNES Classic by having the ability to roll back the gameplay by 45 seconds to a minute from where you left off in that save state. This is great if you're getting rocked by a particular boss and need to go back in time to save your butt. A minor note is the small bit of slowdown that I had playing both Street Fighter II and Yoshi's Island. Street Fighter II has its normal slowdown that it generally had on the SNES back upon its original release, but I seem to notice it being a bit more present while playing on this version. Yoshi's Island also had slowdown as well, but it only was in specific instances, such as when the screen was performing a large white wipe in a section of the game, and it didn't really hamper the gameplay at all. Both are at least worth a note in regards to this review though. As with the NES Classic, there are some questionable additions to the game lineup and some questionable omissions. Licensed games like Turtles in Time make sense because the license for TMNT games would be really high, but I just want to know, where the hell is Chrono Trigger? We have Secret of Mana and Final Fantasy III, but no Chrono Trigger. 2 Kirby games, but no Chrono Trigger. Come on, Nintendo, you should have at least known better or provided a reason for the game selection overall. Nagging issues that return from the NES Classic is the fact that there's no home button on the controller and you have to actually press the reset button on the console itself in order to return to the home screen to select another game. Yes, this is how we did it back in the day with the original, but in 2017, this would have been a nice quality of life improvement to have on the controller itself. Another small nagging point is the flap on the front of the console where the controllers actually plug in. This flap is very flimsy and it feels like it wants to break off all the time, similar to the flap that is on the Nintendo Switch for its card slot. Nintendo needs to realize that this is a bad design and should have just made it so that it opens on a hinge and not some plastic little flap. Last nagging issue is the fact that while there are 2 controllers bundled in with the system, there aren't that many 2-player games with the system itself, so it seems like a bit of a waste. A very minor issue, but again, one that I wanted to bring up. Last bit of information that I wanted to bring up is since the initial release of the console, which at the time of this review is only about 10 days or so, we already have a hack for the console that is out there that allows you to add more than 200 plus games to the system and add custom borders to all the games. Issues like not having Turtles in Time and Chrono Trigger are not an issue anymore if you decide to hack the console, and they work just as well as everything else that is included with the original system in its normal state. I decided to mention it in this review because it definitely adds in a bonus to purchase the system, as the hack is really easy to do, and there are plenty of guides online if you just do a general YouTube or Google search on the issue. So overall, the main question is the NES Classic worth a purchase? Yes, yes, yes. From the good emulation, the selection of games without the hack, faithful controller design, and now the added in bonus of said hack to basically put as many games on you as you want, there's really not much of a reason to not buy it. Casual gamers are probably going to stay away, but if the Super Nintendo was a part of your childhood, I would definitely say to pick one up. I would just say, don't spend more than the MSRP of $79.99, or otherwise you're definitely spending way too much. Thanks for watching this review on the SNES Classic. If you like retro gaming, then be sure to check out the series on my channel called Random Access Memories or the Bucket List of Gaming. I'll be back with more reviews and content soon, but until then, this is Phantom and I'll see you guys around.